Mr. Buck of Colorado.
Pursuant to House Resolution 900, the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Buck, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. This amendment is really very simple. It changes a somewhat convoluted definition of sexual harassment to the following. The term sexual harassment dispute means a dispute relating to conduct that is alleged to constitute sexual harassment under applicable federal, tribal, or state law. Simple, straightforward, understandable. The issue arose here because there was a question whether the definition that was contained in this law would supersede federal, state, or tribal law. It doesn't. However, this clarifies that, and I would ask my colleagues to support this. And I yield back. I reserve.
He did. Does the gentleman reserve or does the gentleman yield back?
Sorry?
Does the gentleman reserve or yield back?
Reserve.
Thank you. Gentleman from New York. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, I claim the time in opposition to the amendment, although I am not opposed.
Gentleman's recognized. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 45 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
I rise in support of the amendment offered by the distinguished gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Buck, the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Antitrust, Commercial, and Administrative Law. This amendment simply clarifies that H.R. 4445 does not amend current law outside of the Federal Arbitration Act. It reflects the bipartisan input of several of my colleagues in the House and Senate, including the bill's sponsor, Congresswoman Bustos. Importantly, this amendment would protect the rights of survivors of sexual harassment by ensuring that they have a choice of litigating or arbitrating any case relating to the conduct that is alleged to constitute sexual harassment under applicable law. It does so by making clear that anything related to sexual harassment or assault as currently defined by law is covered by this bill. This would include retaliation or any other misconduct that gives rise to the underlying claim alleging a violation of these laws and reflects an important compromise struck to protect these cases. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Colorado, and I'm pleased with this amendment by the gentleman from Colorado. It has my full support in the judiciary, and I also appreciate the chairman's non-opposition to the amendment. I believe it makes the bill better. It makes the bill one that I'm going to be eager and pleased to support. The problem before was that the bill possibly made unenforceable arbitration agreements going well beyond sexual harassment disputes. But for sexual harassment disputes, I'm in full agreement that the victim in every case should have the opportunity not to arbitrate, notwithstanding an arbitration agreement. Therefore, this amendment succeeds. I'm going to be glad to support the bill in full, and I'm sure many others will as well. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute and 30 seconds to the sponsor of the bill, Ms. Bustos.
Gentlelady is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a proud co-lead of the amendment with Ranking Member Ken Buck of Colorado. This amendment is the result of good faith negotiations on an issue raised by Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee during debate on my bill, the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act. We promised them that we would work to address those issues, and we did. I'm glad we could reach an agreement to address their concerns about state and local laws. This amendment and the underlying bill are a testament to what we can accomplish when we listen to each other and that we trust that we are working toward a common goal. In this case, that goal is protecting survivors of sexual assault and harassment and giving them a choice on how to pursue justice. I thank Congressman Buck for offering this amendment and working with us to find language to address the concerns of his colleagues. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this amendment, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman and co-sponsor of this bill, Mr. Griffith from Virginia.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment. As we just heard, this was the majority party taking into account the views of the minority party, which is why we have support on both sides of the aisle for this amendment. And this amendment will bring more members of the minority party onto the bill, as one of the co-sponsors of the bill. I think that is a good thing. I think this is an appropriate amendment. I think it does clarify, and I commend Ms. Bustos and Mr. Buck for their hard work on this amendment, and ask that everyone vote for the amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield to another member of the Judiciary Committee's distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
For what period of time?
1 minute. Sorry.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of the bill and the amendment. Sex crimes, including sexual harassment, are some of the most brutal and heinous crimes, causing irreparable damage to their victims. Beyond the physical pain, the psychological trauma usually scars a victim for life. And let us not forget that the vast majority of victims bear this pain silently, since these crimes usually go unreported. I want to thank Ms. Bustos for this bill and the amendments to prohibit forced arbitration when it comes to sexual assault. But I say to you, this is not enough. We must also address secret settlements and non-disclosure agreements. These agreements allow sexual predators to continue to victimize other victims for a long, long time. To remedy this loophole, I will be introducing legislation to prohibit secret settlements when it comes to sexual crimes. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield.
Gentleman from Colorado.
And I am prepared to close whenever.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute and 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. SPEIER.
Gentlelady is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the chairman for the opportunity. This is nothing short of profound. The impact it's going to have on 60 million Americans who don't even know that they have agreed to forced arbitration, and the fact that in 98% of the cases of sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace, the employer wins. We had a hearing last week in which the NFL staffers at the Washington Commanders talked about the sexual harassment and sexual assault that they endured. One of them said in the year and a half that she worked there, she was sexually harassed every single day. Let me speak to Loretta Lee of California, who was fired from Google after complaining about male coworkers, making lewd remarks, sending her disturbing messages, hiding under her desk, and showing up at her apartment. In addition to losing her right to file suit, she was also forced to meet with her perpetrators, resulting in retaliation. Representative Bustos has done a great service to men and women who are sexually harassed and sexually assaulted in the workplace. I commend her. I applaud her. I urge all my colleagues to vote for this amendment and for the legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman has 45 seconds remaining. And
okay.
Gentleman from Colorado has the right to close.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I thank Mr. Buck for offering this helpful amendment. I thank all the people who have been so helpful on this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Colorado.
I thank the gentleman, and I appreciate Ms. Bustos and her willingness to consider this language. I don't know that there was a problem beforehand, but whatever there was, it has been cleared up, and I very much think that this is a stronger bill as a result of this amendment. I urge my colleagues to vote for it, and I yield back.
Pursuant to the rule, the previous question is ordered on the bill and on the amendment ordered by the gentleman